So what if I told you that you could become functionally fluent in English in just 6 months? Seriously, no classes, no boring grammar drills, just a completely different way of looking at learning. Okay, let's dive into this blueprint and see exactly how it's done.
This one sentence is everything. It just perfectly captures that feeling so many of us have had, right? You know the theory, you can pass the test, but you just can't use it in the real world. This was the exact moment, that frustrating feeling that sparked the whole 6-month journey we're about to unpack.
So, let's start with what doesn't work for most people. Let's talk about the grammar trap. It's this endless cycle of studying rules and memorizing charts, but never actually getting to a point where you can just speak.
I mean, does this sound familiar to you? You've spent years in classrooms, you can totally ace a written exam, but the second a native speaker talks to you, your mind just goes blank. You freeze up. It's such a common and honestly a deeply frustrating place to be.
And this is where you can really see the disconnect. It's wild. On one side, you've got all this academic stuff. Present perfect, conditional clauses, all the rules you hammered into your brain. But then, on the other side, there's the reality. You can't actually follow a movie, you miss the punchline of a simple joke, and speaking just feels totally unnatural. That right there is the trap.
Okay, so if the old way is a trap, what's the escape route? Well, the big aha moment came from just throwing out the traditional methods and asking a really simple question about how we all learned our very first language. And that simple question, it's the key to this whole new strategy. Just think about that for a second. How did you learn to speak your native language? This was the light bulb moment, when you realize that the natural way we acquire language looks nothing, and I mean nothing, like a typical language class.
And this just lays it out perfectly. As a kid, you didn't have grammar books or exams. You were just surrounded by the language all the time, constant exposure. You figured out what words meant from the situation, from the context, not from a dictionary. And here's the crucial part. Making mistakes wasn't seen as failure, it was just how you learned. This isn't just a cute idea, by the way. This is about how our brains are literally wired. We're built to learn language through patterns and immersion, not by consciously memorizing rules. This whole method works with your brain's natural programming, instead of fighting against it.
So, how do you take that big idea and turn it into something you can actually do every day? Well, this next part is the blueprint. These are the concrete, step-by-step actions that were taken every single day to make immersion a reality.
Here it is, a super simple, repeatable 3-step routine. In the morning, you've got passive listening, maybe podcasts, YouTube, Netflix, just letting the sounds of English wash over you, no stress. Then, in the afternoon, a short, super focused session of active input. You're rewatching something, but this time you're noticing the phrases people use. And then, the evening. This is the hardest part, but it's the most important. Just 10 to 15 minutes of speaking practice every single day.
Okay, you have to get this next idea deep into your bones. That feeling of sounding silly, of pausing for too long, of being embarrassed, that isn't a sign you're failing. That is the price of admission. You have to walk through that feeling to get to the other side. Fluency is waiting for you there.
All right, so that's the method, but what about the results? Did it actually work? Let's take a look at the actual month-by-month progress to see how this daily blueprint turned into real, tangible skills.
To really appreciate how far you've come, you have to know where you started. And this was the starting line, understanding only about 30 to 40% of English spoken at a normal speed. So lots of gaps, lots of confusion. Just keep this number in your head as we go forward. This timeline is it's fantastic because it's so honest. Month 1, total chaos and doubt. But then somewhere in months 2 and 3, the fog starts to lift. And the huge milestone here, you stop translating in your head. By months 4 and 5, you start to feel some real confidence, and you actually begin thinking in English. Until finally, at the 6-month mark, you hit functional fluency. We're not talking about perfection, but we are talking about the ability to just live your life in the language.
But here's the thing. Beyond all the daily habits, the biggest breakthrough wasn't even linguistic. It was psychological. It was all about a fundamental shift in mindset.
And this slide just nails it. The entire shift is right here. You move away from trying to be grammatically correct all the time, and instead, you just focus on one thing, being understood. It's the difference between slowly trying to build a sentence from rules versus just copying the natural patterns you hear people use. It means letting go of that fear of making a mistake and just communicate.
And in this is the core idea that makes it all click into place. See, native speakers aren't doing complex grammar calculations in their heads. They're just using chunks and patterns they've heard thousands of times. Our brains are actually optimized for this kind of chunking. It's way more efficient than building every single sentence from scratch. Once you start noticing and copying these patterns, your own speaking gets faster and way more natural because you're finally using the language the way your brain was designed to.
So we've looked at the problem, the method, the results, and the mindset. Now let's bring it all home and talk about how you can actually apply this stuff.
Let's just reframe this whole thing. Stop thinking of English like it's a school subject you have to study. Start thinking of it like a tool, like a hammer or a keyboard. You don't learn how to use a hammer by reading the instruction manual, right? No, you learn by picking it up and actually hitting some nails. Language is exactly the same.
If you take away absolutely nothing else, please remember this. The entire method, the whole thing, boils down to these 3 simple, non-negotiable actions. Consume the language every day, speak the language every day, and maybe most importantly, do not wait until you feel ready. That feeling is never going to come. You just have to start.
And that leaves us with one final, and I think pretty powerful question. The progress we just looked at wasn't magic. It was the direct result of daily consistent action. So if you were to commit to this process, starting today, just imagine, where could you